Hi, everybody. This is AT with the third episode trying to define the meanings of liberalism and conservatism. We've already been through Professor Richard Weaver's definition. He called conservatism the paradigm of essences toward which the phenomenology of the world is in continuing approximation. I think we can agree that that lacks a certain bit of utilitarian. It lacks any utility in an argument. Then we have Dr. Russell Kirk's definition, and it too is somewhat vague, although a little more specific. He talks about an enduring moral order. If you're conservative, you believe in it. If you're liberal, you're a little looser on that. In other words, there has to be a God, or it has to be nature's God, as Jefferson put it, for you and me to take the laws seriously. Think of two siblings, young kids in a room. Their parents are gone, and the daughter says, Jimmy, you shouldn't do what you're doing. And Jimmy, the younger brother, says, why not? And she says, because I said so. Well, he's not going to take that seriously. But if she says, because mom and dad said so, he will take it seriously because mom and dad represent that higher authority. They've looked after him and he knows it. So he takes their wisdom seriously. And also, he'll be punished if he violates the rules. So then you have Kirk talking about conservatives believing in the necessity of prudence, which means for a statesman or a head of a company, for instance, taking the long-term view rather than short-term gains. If you're in business and you are CEO of a corporation, if you sell off all the assets in a leveraged buyout, for instance, and then bail out of the company with a $10 billion parachute, that's short-term gains. You've destroyed the company pretty well, but you've gotten a quick short-term reward. If you're a politician, you know, there are variations of that same thing. You should always be thinking long-term. That's what he means by prudence. Kirk talks about conservatives needing variety. That means that we have to recognize that there are going to be orders and classes among people, and that if you have those among you who have produced and done well, lived virtuous lives, they should be rewarded. The liberal is more inclined toward egalitarianism, to say that regardless of what one has done in life, there should be no great disparity in income. We may have to take from the producer and give to the non-producer, and so on. Well, one could agree that Kirk's definition of what a conservative is and the correlation of the opposite for liberalism, but it doesn't really tell us who specifically is a liberal, who is a conservative. Dr. Wilmer Kendall has maybe come up with the answer. He searched before his death in the mid-1960s for that DNA that you and I would be able to use to identify the conservative, to identify the liberal. Let's take a look at what Kendall says are not the differences between the two. It's not party affiliation. Yes, Democrats tend to attract liberals. Republicans today attract the conservatives. But we have people in the Senate today, like Senator Bill Nelson of Florida, Democrat. He's fairly conservative. And we have many liberal Republicans. It's also not attitude toward change. Yes, it is true that conservatives tend to be more stand pat in things. But ask yourself this. What if you had all Ronald Reagans and Barry Goldwaters and Donald Trumps occupying every seat in Congress, all 536, whatever, occupying the White House, and you have Justice Scalia's occupying all of the seats on the Supreme and lower courts. If you had that, all conservatives, you would see far more change than you ever dreamed of. So the difference between conservative and liberal, says Kendall, is not attitude toward change. Well, maybe it's religion. Some people say so. Conservatives tend to be more religious, where liberals they tend to be more secular. True, liberals are a little more happy. They seem to be more comfortable in the secularist camp, but you find many fundamentalist Christian believers who are Democrats, and you find many agnostics and atheists who are Republicans. And maybe it's that conservatives are hardcore anti-communist, and liberals tend to be wishy-washy with regard to communism. Well, there is a tendency for this to be true, but if you go back into the 1950s and 60s, you'll find many Democrats who are hardcore anti-communist and several liberal Republicans who take a very lenient view. All right, so what is the difference according to Kendall? And if we know that difference, that genetic makeup in the DNA, political DNA, will we be able to always tell who is a liberal, who is a conservative? I think so. Let me know what you think. Kendall says that the big difference between the two, liberals and conservatives, is the attitude regarding equality. The liberal is an egalitarian. He wants the wealth shared, the prestige shared, and the power shared. Whereas the conservative has a natural inclination to reward people on the basis of merit. In other words, you have to earn your power, earn your wealth, earn your prestige. And that is the major difference. The attitude toward communism, let's go back to that again. I mentioned that you had many hardcore liberals who were anti-communist. And that's true, but for very different reasons. They objected to the Stalinist methods employed by, well, Stalin and by Brezhnev and his followers, by Chairman Mao, by Ho Chi Minh, and all the mini-me's that made up communist dictatorships right up to this day. That's the reason why liberals detested communism. The ideal, however, the liberals liked. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That's a liberal orgasm. The conservative sees that as anathema. Not only did the conservative detest the totalitarian element of communism, the conservative detested the idea of giving people whatever they need, whether they earned it or not, and expecting people to produce all these things. The conservative would say, with regard to the question of religion, that there is, let's say in this country, one predominant religion. It is Christianity. The country was founded on those basic principles. Even the agnostic Jefferson understood that. And whereas the liberal is inclined to say that there are many good things to say about Christianity, but what about the other ones? What about Taoism? What about Buddhism? And so on. That they're all pretty much equal. Everything's relative, and so on. Do you get the idea? Kendall says the attitude toward equality is what will define a person's political bias, to the left or liberal, or to the right conservative. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, or dislike the video. Thanks. This is E.T. Bye.